This is a Willets Point Shea Stadium bound 7 express train. The next and last stop is Willets Point, Shea Stadium.
Oh, yes, it is the Subway to Shea podcast. Anthony Rivera here with you, talking about all the news and happenings surrounding that team from Queens, the New York Mets. Episode 161 from the Subway to Shea studios in my office. Make sure you're following Subway to Shea on X, Instagram, and TikTok at Subway to Shea. You can follow me at Ant Rivera 86. And please subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts and Spotify if you prefer to listen, or if you're doing it right now, you're subscribing on YouTube. Make sure you like the video as well. That helps me out a whole lot. We got 48 people. I haven't even started talking yet, really, about the Mets. And we got 48 people in this room ready to talk about these New York Mets. Shout out to every one of you that are in this room. Like I said, like the video, subscribe to the channel. We got Brad in here, Duran Rivera in here, Stanley Babbage in here, my guy Yuki Matsui's in here, Maureen, Patty from NYC also in the house. My guy CP is in the building. Shout out to everybody that is here and ready to go. Rosie K just got in here as well. Got my Mets hockey jersey on, starting to grow the playoff beard. As you can see, we are not shaving this beard until there is some type of elimination, and hopefully that doesn't come at all. Hopefully we go all the way to November. But first, we have to clinch a playoff spot. We're going to get into all of that on today's show. It's just me and you. So I want to hear your comments, your thoughts, any questions you have. Let's get into all of it. And we got to start off with just what was probably one of the best homestands in Mets history and just in Citi Field. I mean, Met fans showed out. So I want to first off shout out, salute to the Met fans who came to the final homestand of the season as the Mets took on the Washington Nationals and finished it off with a 4-game set with the Philadelphia Phillies. The attendance was outstanding for the 4-game set. Anthony River of Newsday Sports saying it was the highest attendance for a 4-game set in Citi Field history. 2 sellouts and over 165,000 fans were in attendance for the 4-game set. I was there on Wednesday when the Mets beat the Nationals 10-0, and I was there on Saturday with my guy Ibby from Till Mets Do Us Part. He'll tell you, I'm pretty sure, on Wednesday when they do their show, what an experience that was. A sellout crowd. You could barely move. I had a free ice cream to get because of my Mets Connecting, and I couldn't get it because the lines were so long for everything. But it's good to see the fans out there at Citi Field. The vibe, and I'm pretty sure a lot of you fans will agree with me, the vibe at Citi Field for this weekend was totally different from the vibe in 2022. As we all know, the Mets kind of fell apart in September. This is a lot different. This is a different vibe that this team is bringing to us. And I'm so excited to be a part of it. I know you guys are excited to be a part of it as well. And just seeing what this Mets team has done, you can start it off with, Seymour Wiener, then Max Wiener, Seymour Wiener, the veteran from World War II, onto Max Wiener, the rally pimp. You can talk about Grimace. You could talk about OMG. You could talk about the meetings, everything that has happened this season with this New York Mets team. There's one word to describe this season, and it's resilience. This team has been so resilient all season long. Started off 0-5, had the atrocious May. And then after that meeting, Grimace comes along as well. OMG becomes a big thing. And the Mets have been one of the best teams, if not the best team in all of Major League Baseball. And they've fought and fought and fought. We thought April could break them because they had the West Coast trip and they had, some tough losses. Didn't do it. The 0-5 didn't do it, right? That May didn't do it. And this team has been resilient behind Carlos Mendoza and how he has handled this team. You could even put David Stearns in there for how he has adapted this roster and has made them better throughout the entire year, whether it was getting rid of Jorge Lopez, Joey Wendell, Zach Short, bringing up Jose Iglesias, making Mark Vientos the starting third baseman, bringing in Jesse Winker and Ryan Stanek and Phil Maton. So much has happened this season. And the New York Mets are 2 wins away from clinching a spot in the postseason. Very exciting to be around. Brad bringing up Glitzy Iggy. I forgot about Glitzy Iggy. Thank you for bringing that up. Everyone is in here today, over 78 of you to start this show, because the Mets have something special going on right now. I don't know if you saw the videos after the game and everyone celebrating outside of Citi Field. No one wanted to go home. It felt like, what I saw when the Knicks finally turned the corner and made it to the playoffs and everyone was celebrating outside on the streets. Now, I'm not comparing the teams, but it felt like that. Something you didn't feel in 2022. I was at game 2 of the Wild Card series, DeGrom's last game, the only game they won. And it still wasn't packed. It still didn't have that aura around it. Everything was tense. Everyone felt, I don't want to say scared, but tense. Tense is probably the best word to use. But this year's different. Something is going on with this team. Something special is happening with this New York Mets team. And we're going to talk about that on today's show. We're going to talk about a lot of things here. And we got to start off with the final home stand of the season. Mets went 6-1, 3-0 versus the Washington Nationals, 3-1 versus the Philadelphia Phillies, winning both series, scored 10 runs in 3 straight games for the first time in franchise history. Remember I said these things are happening. 11-2 at home in September. Remember how awful of a start the Mets got off to at home? Home cooking was well and good. Mike Mayer of Metsmerized said in the last 45 games at Citi Field, the Mets were 33-12. Big turnaround from earlier on in the season. Now I'm going to get to some of your comments, to some of your questions that are in here. And look, the Mets have a lot going on for them. But I want to talk about 3 takeaways. 3 takeaways from this, week. One being Brandon Nimmo's call to arms, telling the fans to get out to the ballpark, support the team. They need them as that 10th man on the field. And that's what the fans did. The fans came out strong, like I said earlier on in the show. But on top of that, Brandon Nimmo has come to play. We lost him for most of the second half of the season. But he came ready to play this week and has really turned it around. Last 7 games, 3 home runs and 9 RBIs. Totaling up his 2024 season so far. Obviously, 220 batting average is not great. 22 home runs, 87 RBIs. He's been a major part of what this team has done this season. He's got a 740 OPS. It's been huge. And you look at the rest of the offense, that's another takeaway This Mets offense has delivered in Francisco Lindor's absence. The MVP of the team and quite possibly the National League. Obviously, probably Ohtani's going to win it. But if you look behind the lines, when you do what Francisco Lindor has done, when you are as important to your team as Francisco Lindor is on the field, at the plate, off the field, he's really the MVP. And when Pete Alonso was not hitting, when Brandon Nimmo was not hitting, it was really Francisco Lindor leading the charge. Big clutch hits. Talk about that game-tying home run in Toronto when there was a no-hitter going on. Then he gets hurt in Philly. The back injury is nothing to mess with. I don't know when we're going to see him. We'll talk about that as this show goes on. But in his place, in Francisco Lindor's place, outside of Brandon Nimmo, there are three other Mets position players, three other Mets hitters that have stepped up to the plate. Number one, his actual replacement, Luis Angel Acuna, batting .379, 3 home runs, 6 RBIs, an .828 OPS. I was there on Saturday for his big home run to give the Mets the lead against the Phillies. Jose Iglesias, who's been outstanding the entire season nonetheless. But over the last 7 games, in the absence of Francisco Lindor, batting .416, a .467 on-base percentage, and a 16-game hitting streak, even going past those 7 games. Still's got that hitting streak intact right now. And then the other batter, Tyrone Taylor. .450 batting average in the last 7 games, 3 RBIs, 3 big RBIs. I mean, he had the big RBI on Sunday to tie the game. He's been clutch most of the season. And he has been one of those backup outfielders that we've always wanted. Plays great defense and has come up clutch when we needed him down the stretch. And that is why this offense has been the way it has been over the last several games and over this homestand. So we talk about the 3 biggest takeaways. Brandon Nimmo's call to arms. The Mets offense delivering in Francisco Lindor's absence. And then how can we not talk about the dominance of Edwin Diaz? 7 1/3 innings pitch, 1.23 ERA, 5 hits, 1 earned run, 2 walks, 12 strikeouts, and a .095 whip. Saturday, the game I was at, 4-out save. Sunday, 6-out save. Pressure situations, he's going to be coming in every time now. The gloves are off, as Mendy said. It's big boy time. Is 2022 Diaz back? I don't know. Maybe we're getting a hybrid of this. But it's great to see Edwin Diaz, who needs consistency. I talked about this with my good friend from Talkin' Mets, Mike Silva. Edwin Diaz needs consistency. Once you let him go cold, it's hard for him to get it back right away. But when you see consistent playing time, when you see him pitch the way he has, he starts to get hotter and hotter. And he was that in the 8th inning against the heart of the lineup, Schwarber, Harper. It was big-time saves this weekend for Edwin Diaz. That's why you pay Edwin Diaz the big bucks that he has gotten paid. What a way to close out Citi Field for the regular season. I want to get to some of your comments here in the chat. Brad saying Diaz looks electric again. You know, seeing him live, seeing him on TV, I mean, he has been absolutely outstanding. Absolutely outstanding. Jeff Cohen saying, "Ant, do you credit Hefner for the pitching staff turnaround?" And Jeff Cohen knows I'm not the biggest fan of Jeremy Hefner. A lot of you guys know I'm not the biggest fan of Jeremy Hefner. But how does he not get credit for what has happened? How does he not get credit for what we've seen from this starting rotation? What we've seen from the bullpen? Now, it's not all him. David Stearns had to bring these guys in, right? Sevy was a guy I talked about in the offseason that I wanted. Minaya as well. And you looked at how he's pieced the bullpen together is something that we were hoping that Billy Epler could do, and he just could not. And somehow, some way, David Stearns was able to find the Phil Matons, Ryan Stanek to a certain extent. Danny Young, who was pitching well before this last week. But Hefner does deserve some credit for what has happened so far. Trying to go through some more of these comments here. Daniel Cap saying Diaz looks good. Yuki Matsui saying, "Am I a bad Mets fan? Because I'm tired of OMG signed t-shirts. It was fun in the beginning, but getting old." I don't want to mess with any of the juju the Mets got going on. If it works for them, I'm all for it. There's been so many things, right? OMG, Grimace, we talked about it. There's just been so many things that have been going on with this team that whatever's going to work, whatever gets them going every day, I'm all good with. I am all good with. Rosie K saying, Mets are in good hands with Stearns, just like I was talking about earlier. Carlos Ramos saying, sup, Ant, the better question is, does what Hefner has done with the pitching rotation warrant him coming back in 2025? I think that's kind of automatic at this point, right? How can you, even though I'm not a big fan of him, how can you let him go considering the month that these guys have had? You look at every starting pitcher in this rotation, which I'll get a little deeper into as the show goes on. It's going to be kind of hard to get rid of Jeremy Hefner unless there's a just complete collapse from this entire Mets team. So I don't see that happening. But, I mean, we've seen crazier things, right? Because David Stearns has been kind of cleaning up the minor league system and getting rid of scouts and all this other stuff. So you never know. He may want his own pitching coach. Or he may like the way that Jeremy Hefner does his stuff. I mean, maybe earlier on in the season when they were having this rough go, maybe he would have gotten rid of him, but I don't think that's happening now. Daniel Cab saying, coming into the season, you see a rotation that had no true ace. Senga, okay. I mean, obviously, we all wanted Senga to be here, and it's not worked out. I don't think anyone imagined that the rotation would be this good, but I also didn't think it was going to be awful. I knew that if you were able to tap into the potential, and this is why I wanted Luis Severino and Sean Manaea, if you were able to tap into their potential, because we know they've been good in the past, and bring that back, or in regards to Sean Manaea, who's learned a new arm slot and arm angle, which I've talked about with CP when he's on my show, that these guys would be able to, I don't want to say anchor the rotation, but be a good a part of it. And they've done that and more with Kodai Senga being out. I think the bigger thing, is David Peterson has pitched well since coming back from hip surgery. And this month, getting the production out of Tyler McGill has been huge. And we know Jose Quintana is that guy, that he's a professional. Even though I wanted him gone after that big struggle, but another guy that has had a big September. It's just this rotation. You look at rotations of the past, the 2022 rotation, what was supposed to be the Mets' future rotation from 2015 on, and those guys could not get it together and stay healthy long enough to be together. This is something a little different. Something's happening with this team. Should I say it's magical right now? I don't know. But something is happening with this team that's so positive right now that they are only 2 wins away from getting into the postseason. Now, I think in the offseason, once they signed JD Martinez, I had them at, I think, 87 wins. We're here already. And the funny thing is, if you're on Twitter and Elliot from Spaces, rest in peace, Elliot. We lost him a couple weeks ago, a good friend of Subway to Shea and the Spaces that I got to be able to join with him. He said 89 wins. Yeah. And if the Mets win 2 more games, 89 wins and a playoff spot. So we'll see where this takes the Mets, where they go from here. Yuki Matsui, maybe a team of destiny. Maybe it is. Maybe it is a team of destiny. We'll definitely see where they go with this series coming up with the Braves. Series preview is coming up shortly to talk to you guys about that. And Maureen saying, I've witnessed 2 World Series championships in my life. My greatest wish is that all my friends in the Mets community get to witness that. It's an amazing experience. I've yet to witness mine. I was born 2 weeks after the Mets won the 86 World Series. So we have been waiting all my life. And hopefully that comes soon. Shout out to Shea Parking Lot, who just joined us. Thank you for coming on to the show, my friend. He says, I'm so excited and nervous at the same time. Can't stay long. Got to go back to work. Let's go, Mets. I appreciate you just coming in to say hello. So it's always awesome to have you. And as always, you can come back, check in on the show at any time. Make sure you like it, subscribe it. You can listen to it on audio on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Brad's saying, might even say the 2006 team. This team is so balanced and has depth all over. That 2006 team, and I've said this before, that was the last time I believed a team from beginning to end would win the World Series. After that crushing loss, I have been very hesitant. I have been a cautious optimistic. But I do say that there is something special going on right now. Stanley Babbage saying, where does Acuna play when Lindor returns? And I'm glad he brought that up because that goes into my next topic of the Francisco Lindor update. We got to talk about Lindor. We got to talk about what's going on with him. And he's been ramping up his baseball activities. You see him running, playing catch, batting practice now from both sides. He's optimistic that he will return for the regular season, but he doesn't think the pain will go away anytime soon, which is, I don't want to say it's alarming. That's something that you would expect, right? I mean, if anyone has ever hurt their back in this chat, I mean, I know I have. That lingers. Like, it took me a good month to feel better. So, and we're expecting him to come back within a week. Now, going back to Stanley's question where he says, where does Acuna play when Lindor returns? I think you play him a little bit at second base, which is good, right? It looks like Mark Vientos, although he got that double and he scored the tying run in Sunday's game, it looks like he's a little bit tired. On Saturday, he struck out 5 times, and he's been struggling as of late. So maybe there's some, I don't want to say platooning, but a schedule of rest for some of these guys. And that includes Jose Iglesias too. I love that Jose Iglesias has been a big part of this offense and a big part of this team. But you don't want to overexpose Jose Iglesias, right? It was different when Jeff McNeil was around and you'd be able to, have him come off the bench and have him start. He's been playing a lot every day, and I don't want him to tire out. I don't want him to get overexposed here. So maybe him and Acuna play a little more of second base together. Maybe he plays some of third. Obviously, he could play the outfield, but we have enough outfielders right now. They will figure out a way to get Acuna into the lineup if he keeps hitting. And that's what Mendy said. He said that moving forward, Acuna is going to be an important part of this lineup. And I went through the stats with you earlier. 379, 3 homers, 6 RBIs, and 828 OPS. He's been huge. I think the bigger question from what Stanley was talking about to raise is, how do you bring Francisco Lindor back? Do you bring him back game 1 against Atlanta on Tuesday? Or, and this is what I would do, he doesn't play tomorrow, right? You let Acuna play. You see if the Mets can win the first game. And if they keep winning, you rest him. You keep resting Francisco Lindor. Now, if they take the 2 out of 3 from the Braves and clinch a playoff spot, to me, Lindor rests now until the postseason, which begins Tuesday, October 2nd. That's the way I would handle it. What do you have to lose when you have Acuna playing so well right now? You don't want to stop all that's going on. And you bring back Lindor, he's not 100% healthy, which he won't be. But until the Mets find themselves, I don't want to say in some kind of hole, Lindor doesn't come back. You let him rest if the team keeps winning. They've been winning without him. They're 6-1 without him. I'd keep rolling the dice with that. Jeff Cohen saying, with Acuna playing so well, no need to rush Lindor back. Don't get me wrong, Mets need Lindor, but he needs to be as good as possible. So we agree on that point. Shout out to my guy, Uptown Sports TV, Hector in the building, doing great stuff, not only for Uptown Sports TV, which, Mets bias aside, he's a huge Yankee fan and he's got a great Yankee show. Got to interview Bernie Williams today. How awesome is that? Check that out. Go to Uptown Sports TV on YouTube. Make sure you check that out. Also, make sure you're following him at Latino Sports. He does great work there as well. Salute to you and all the hard work you're doing, my friend. Great to have you on here. And we'll have to do our Subway Series, or not Subway Series, but maybe New York baseball playoff preview at some point if both teams are in the playoffs. The Yankees already in, Mets still needing to get in. Craig Moranci saying, given the weather forecast in Atlanta for Wednesday and Thursday, I'd worry about Lindor playing those days if they play at all. That's true. I think Tuesday's supposed to be good. Wednesday may or may not rain. Thursday definitely rain, and I heard something about hurricane coming there. So there was something that I heard today on the Michael Kay show where he was talking about the possibility of MLB looking into turning Wednesday's game into a doubleheader. I don't know how true that is, but if it is, that gets everything out of the way early. We'll see if that's something that they consider. But if not, they would have to play that third game on Monday when the season's over. So, especially if there's, implications of the Braves needing to get in or the Mets needing to get in. Obviously, if the Braves are eliminated or the Mets are eliminated, they're not going to play that. But it might come down to playing on Monday unless they do this doubleheader. But I don't know how true that is. Carlos Ramos saying, let me ask you, Ant, if Lindor comes back, would you play Vientos at DH, Acuna at second base, and Iglesias at third base? I might consider that, especially with the struggles of JD Martinez right now. I would still like to see Vientos play third base since I think he's been a pretty adequate third baseman. Um, Maybe there's a little bit of a switch off with the days, like I said earlier, but definitely would consider that. That's not, that's something that we're probably going to see, and probably something that Carlos Mendoza definitely goes on to talk about with the team. And I don't think it hurts them either way. Rosie King saying, should they DH Lindor? That's a possibility as well. Limit him on the field. But, still swinging doesn't help the back either. So Ricardo's had enough of JD Martinez. So he's probably on line with having Vientos DH or Lindor DH. But we'll see. Jeff Cohen saying Acuna is on a hot streak, as said in Bull Durham. Never mess with the winning streak. And I'll let you use the words there. But yeah, you don't want to mess with something that's going on good. Maureen saying, anyone else not sleeping well due to being on a perpetual adrenaline rush. This team has brought us through some kind of week, and it continues once they get to Atlanta and start that 3-game set in that house of horrors that we always talk about. I want to get into this Mets rotation. It said we were going to talk about the rotation. They have been outstanding this month and have been a big part of why this Mets team is the way it is. And it feels like they've got this kind of brotherhood going on, right? I don't know if you see every time one of the starters has a good start, they have their own OMG sign and they're all jumping up and down. It's nice to see the camaraderie between these guys. And I don't know when was the last time the Mets had multiple starting pitchers. Maybe you guys know. You can throw it in the chat. And as Brad's saying, rotation is one of the best in baseball. And I got to agree. Look at this Mets rotation. Sean Manaea, who's pretty much been the ace of the staff, 12-5 with a 3.29 ERA. His last game at Citi Field, which I hope it's not. I hope they bring him back. But he was fantastic, and he has been fantastic in the second half and down the stretch. What a turnaround for Sean Manaea after switching arm angles, kind of going with that like sidearm angle, kind of a la Chris Sale. That's who he said he learned it from. But 12-5 with a 3.29 ERA. Luis Severino, 11-6 with a 3.79 ERA. Jose Quintana, 10-9 with a 3.74 ERA. And this is what's big about those three starters. And whether you like Jose Quintana or not, he's got a winning record. All three of them are in double digits of wins. All three of them have pitched and started in 30 games. Remember the last time we expected a Jacob deGrom to do something like that? Max Scherzer, Justin Verlander. These guys have been healthy so far for the entire year. Knock on wood, they stay healthy. David Peterson is 1 win away from joining that group in double digits at 9-3. And I don't remember the last time the Mets had that many people in the starting rotation with double-digit wins. He will start on Wednesday and go up against Chris Sale. Rosie K saying, interesting decision to pitch Peterson on Wednesday. And I don't think he pitched that much on that Friday night game. Carlos Mendoza had a quick hook on him. And Tyler McGill, he's only 4-5 with a 3.98 ERA. But what more could you have asked from him? What more could you have asked from Tyler McGill in the month of September? Everyone knew I wanted him in the bullpen, but he has pitched very well. And that's the best part of everything that's happened so far. So now to the big part here. The Atlanta Braves. The big 3 games set where the Mets have destiny in their hands. The fate of their playoff existence rides. Well, I mean, they still have an opportunity, but we know what happened in 2022 when all they needed to do was win 1 game and they got swept. I don't know. I don't have a feeling like it's going to happen this time around. I just don't. Game 1, Tuesday night, Luis Severino against Spencer Schwellenbach. Severino, like I said, 11-6, 3.79 ERA. Schwellenbach, 7-7 with 3.61 ERA. Go to Wednesday, David Peterson, 9-3 with 3.08 ERA, going up against Chris Sale, who's 18-3 with a 2.38 ERA. Probably a possible Cy Young candidate. And Thursday, Sean Manaea wraps up his season, 12-5 with a 3.29 ERA, going up against Max Fried, who's 10-10 with a 3.42 ERA. I know that Met fans wanted this team to have a bigger lead on this Braves team. I mean, we all would have. But I feel that this Mets team needs to exercise the demons in Atlanta. There's nothing I want more than for the Mets to take 2 out of 3 and pop bottles of champagne in Atlanta. And you can say, oh, it's just a wild card. No. These guys have endured so much this season. They deserve it. Nothing like 2022 where they were all subdued and they went back and had champagne. None of that stuff. I want them celebrating in Atlanta. Was it Truist Park now? I want to see them celebrate in Atlanta. And maybe we had to go through 2022 to get to this point. Maybe that needed to happen for this team to get to this moment. But I want them to take 2 out of 3. Duran Rivera is saying it's going to be tough against Atlanta's pitching, but if Mets starters match them, we should be okay. They've also dealt with injury. Spencer Strider being out. They have Austin Riley out. Ozzie Albies just came back. Acuna out for the year. So we're not the only team that has been dealing with injuries. They have as well. I want the Mets to get it done in Atlanta. Take game 1 and figure out the rest afterwards. Put pressure on Atlanta. And even if you only take one of these games, at the very least, you're tied going into the final weekend of the season. But the Braves aren't the only team that the Mets need to be concerned about. Because they are tied right now with the Arizona Diamondbacks, and they're getting ready to play the San Francisco Giants. So they'll either be a half game up or a half game behind when this game ends. We won't be talking about it on this podcast because it starts late. But thanks to Milwaukee coming back down from 8-0 and beating Arizona on Sunday, we are tied again for the wild card. The second wild card, that is. So let's bring up the wild card standing, shall we? Because there are a lot of implications when it comes to what the Mets will do, where the Mets will finish. And it's very important. There we are. San Diego has the top spot. And this is why the series with Arizona is very important. You would think San Diego would rest, right? You think San Diego would rest the last 3 games of the season because they're playing Arizona. Nah. They have an opportunity to still win the division. They are only 3 games behind the Los Angeles Dodgers, and they're getting set for a 3-game set with them, a 3-game series with them. So San Diego is going to play hard for the rest of the way. And that includes having to beat Arizona. I think obviously Atlanta plays us, and then I think they play Pittsburgh. If someone can remind me who they're playing, that would be awesome. But I think they do play, or is it the Royals? It might be the Royals. That's either Pittsburgh or the Royals. I can't remember off the top of my head. But Atlanta does finish down there. Rosie K, thank you, KC. Shout out to my guy Keith in the house. He was there Sunday night enjoying the game. This right here is huge, guys. This right here is huge. I definitely think that the Mets are getting into this postseason. I believe. I hope you believe. I believe. And I think it's going to happen in Atlanta. I want it to happen in Atlanta. It needs to happen in Atlanta. Like Ace Ventura, they need to exercise these demons against the Atlanta Braves in that house of horrors. Shout out to Ibby from Till Mets His Part in here. We were hanging out at the game earlier on Saturday. That was a fun game to be at and fun game to be a part of. Now, there are also how the Mets can clinch this playoff spot. And Danny Abriano of SNY pulled it up and wrote the article. But here it is, right? The Mets to clinch a playoff spot since being 2 games up on the Braves. If the Mets take at least 2 of 3 from this series, they are in. If the Mets go 4-2 over their last final 6 games, they're also in. As you continue, they control their own destiny right now. Now, the Mets need help. Obviously, if the Braves sweep them, which I don't think is going to happen, they would be 1 game back of the Braves and without a tiebreak. Right now, it's 5-5, right? The Mets hold the tiebreak against the Padres. They hold the tiebreak against the Arizona Diamondbacks. They're 5-5 against the Braves. So winning the series obviously gives them the tiebreak, gets them into the postseason, and the Braves cannot overtake them. For the Mets to finish ahead of the Braves, if they got swept, they would need to win the 3 games against the Brewers, while the Braves lose at least 2 games to the Royals, win 2 games against Brewers, while Braves lose 3 games to the Royals. And like I mentioned earlier, got to watch out for the Diamondbacks. That is a big part of what's going on here. And the NL East scenario, that's kind of out of the picture right now. I think the Phillies are pretty much wrapping up against the Chicago Cubs to take that division title. Another one. The good thing is they didn't do it on our turf. That was one of the main things. I really didn't want them making the postseason on our turf. But the fact that they had the opportunity to win the division would have been even worse. But thank goodness that did not happen. Now, before we wrap up here, a couple of news and happenings surrounding that team from Queens. I know a couple of you guys in the chat talked about Kodai Senga and wanting to know what's up with him. Well, he's out for the remainder of the regular season after feeling tightness on his triceps during a rehab outing. He only pitched 1 inning in that rehab outing. I think he was supposed to throw around 30 pitches. He was unable to do that. He did throw 1 inning, 15 pitches, 2 strikeouts, but he's done for the regular season. And they really put an emphasis on being done for the regular season with an opportunity to come back for the postseason. But we've only got to see Kodai Senga once this year. And although he won and pitched very well, obviously getting him back is huge. But they've been able to do this without him all season long. And I'm not counting on him coming back. The body's kind of unforgiving for him right now. So I'm not counting on him returning in the postseason. Someone who's definitely not pitching in the postseason is Christian Scott. He will be having Tommy John surgery, some type of hybrid Tommy John surgery. It's supposed to have a quicker healing time. In 9 starts this season, 0-3 with a 4.56 ERA. A couple other notes. The Mets are doing an amazing day on January 25th, 2024 at Citi Field. I assume it's some type of convention day. They did it once before. I did not get to go out for that one. So if you did, you got info on it, hit me up. Let me know what it was about. I did go to the QBC, and I hope to be going to the QBC again this year as well. A lot of fun hanging out with all you guys. And a lot of the, content creators and podcasts and shows. And, Terry Collins was there, Billy Wagner, Cliff Floyd. It was a lot of fun. So I hope to see you guys at the QBC in December when that comes out. Mets had some developmental player of the year awards. Player of the year, Nick Morabito, 312 batting average, 4 homers, 32 RBIs, 59 stolen bases, and an 801 OPS. And the Mets pitcher of the year, no surprise, Brandon Sproat, 24 games, 7-4 with a 3.40 ERA and 131 Ks in 116 and a third innings pitched. Well, excuse me. The time for talking is wrapped up here. Obviously, any more comments or questions you have, I'll be taking those. But if not, we're going to pretty much wrap up the show here. Appreciate everyone for tuning in and being a part of this hour with me. The Mets have quite possibly the biggest week ahead of them. Who would have thought at the beginning of the season that the Mets would be in this position at this time? Holding the fate of their playoff and postseason opportunity in their hands. At the start of the season, there were no expectations. David Stearns was very subdued. Carlos Mendoza came in, said all the right things. Team got off to a rough start. They turned it around. Had the terrible May. They turned it around. A meeting here, a grimace there, an Izzy Glizzy here, OMG there. The Mets have been the best team in baseball since that meeting. Not to mention that they had another meeting once Francisco Lindor went down, resulting in a 6-1 final homestand. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a huge week coming up, and I am excited. I, for one, am very excited for what is to happen this week. I want this playoff beard to continue to grow all the way into November. This team is different. It feels different. Have faith in them. Support them as much as you can. If some of you going down to Atlanta, cheer as loud as possible for this Mets team. Because this week in Atlanta, I want champagne bottles to pop. I want them to enjoy this time. No more being afraid of the Braves. No more losses to the Braves. No more House of Horrors. It's time. Our time is now. Let's clinch a wild card berth in Atlanta and get ready for the postseason. Now, you can follow the Subway to Shea podcast on X, Instagram, and TikTok. I will be with you along the way of this journey. Follow me at Subway to Shea. You can follow me personally at Ant Rivera 86. Subscribe on Apple Podcasts and Spotify if you want to listen to the audio version, or like you're doing right now, subscribe on YouTube, like the video. It helps me out a lot with all the support that you have given me throughout the many years here. I hope to bring you postseason content. We will return Sunday night at 9 p.m. for the final regular season episode of the Subway to Shea podcast, which then I hope on Monday night, we can do a wild card preview. And tomorrow, after each Braves game, I will be doing a Twitter or X space with my co-host, Mike Silver from Talking Mets. You guys can join in on the chat. How are your feelings on the game? We'll recap the game, and we will do a show post every game on Twitter X. So make sure you're looking out for those starting tomorrow. But for Anthony Rivera, thank you to the 162 of you that are in here right now. Thank you to everyone in the chat. I appreciate every single one of you. Carlos, Maureen, Duran, everyone that's been in here. There's so Matt, my guy Ibby, Craig, Rosie K, Keith. There's been so many. Stanley, Stanley, Brad, Jeff Cohen, Ricardo, everybody that came into this room, CP. And I got to leave you with two things. One is let's go Mets. And two is something that we've learned at being a Mets fan since birth. If we want to win this, all we got to do is believe. You got to believe in these New York Mets. Take care, everyone, and I'll see you next week. For Anthony Rivera, this has been the Subway to Shea podcast.